We'll be going live soon. We're talking about Idalia, just waiting for a few people to join. A lot to cover tonight. You see Idalia here on radar right now from the Tampa radar, so definitely approaching northwest Florida, the Panhandle. We'll cover it all. We'll talk about impacts. We'll talk about where this hurricane might be heading. Okay, like I said, we'll be going live soon. If you're watching live, go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from so we know which areas to zero in on and talk about. If you're watching later, go ahead and leave a comment and let me know where you're at and any questions you have. I do check in on those comments pretty regularly. If you're wanting to support the page, go ahead and send some stars. It looks like we've already hit a goal for 5,000 stars. Let's go ahead and try for another 5,000. You can always support the page in that way. That's much appreciated. I don't do this for money or anything, so. Okay, we'll be going live very shortly. Got a few people in here. Okay. Didn't have the music on. Just realized. We'll be going live shortly. All right, let's go. Get a little bit of music in there. Okay. Alrighty, how's everybody doing? Go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know how you're doing. Got William checking in. Good old Deltona, like your beard there now. Definitely healthy, my friend. Got a pretty healthy beard going. The Bearded Weatherman, that's where we're at. Greg's checking in from Palm Coast. My brother lives up there. Kayla's checking in from Daytona. What's the chance it shifts east? We'll talk about that. What the track looks like here in a minute. DeLand, Sue. Sue is in DeLand. That's my hometown. Good to see you, Sue. Got an Anna in Spring Hill. Very nice. Welcome, Anna. Appreciate your support, guys. All right. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. Hurricane Idalia, now a hurricane, upgraded since yesterday. You see the radar here starting to develop an eye feature. That's definitely a sign of strengthening for this storm. Right now, Category 2 storm, I believe, or let's check that. As of the latest from the National Hurricane Center, 105 miles per hour puts it at a Category 2, still strengthening. Expected to become a major hurricane soon. You can see the M there. So it's expected to become that Category 3 level of 111 miles per hour plus for the strength. And that is coming soon. But look at the radar here. So you see a few bands approaching the Tampa area right now. See these feeder bands here. Probably some tropical storm force gust winds in there. We've been watching for some of that surge to happen with these winds that come in out of the south. It's going to be pushing water. This pin is, if anyone knows, the trials and tribulations of epic pin, not so epic. As this southerly wind starts to push in to the bay, that storm surge should start to come about. I haven't really seen that. We're going to check in on the latest buoy data here in a minute. But you do see the outer bands now approaching Tampa, so there's some stronger rain showers and thunderstorms in there. Saw a band moving through central Florida last few hours up here. So definitely some of the effects already being felt, but the core of the storm, the really strong part of the storm out here, staying well offshore of west central Florida at this point. So that's good news. Those hurricane force winds staying well offshore as of right now, but of course we're going to be seeing those impacts soon in North Florida. So we'll talk about that in the track. But just wanted to show you the latest radar. There is now currently a slight risk area over central Florida. Oh, it looks like as of 10 minutes ago, we now have a Hurricane Idalia related tornado watch in effect. This is normal for this right front side of the storm. You get a lot of turning in there, a lot of very warm, unstable air coming on shore. You get a little bit of friction from the shoreline and the land, and it kind of turns the air just enough to shear it and to cause some isolated tornadoes within some of those outer bands. I just got a notification of some stars getting sent my way. That is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Terry. Bravo Zulu to you. Anna says, am I going to cover the last recon? I'll check the latest recon too. Terry's just starting a Star Wars party right here, guys. So if you want to get involved in that and help support the page, that's greatly appreciated, of course. Jillian says 5,000 more stars, you can get a new filter. Yeah, I got a little filter up, you know. I don't want you to see how messy things are back there. In any case, we do have a tornado watch out now. It is valid from 8:30 p.m. Eastern, so that just went into effect until 6 a.m. all night. You're going to have this tornado watch in effect as, again, those outer bands come on shore and start to potentially cause, here's even more of it down here, start to cause a tornado threat to begin to come about. So that is the latest from the National Weather Service. Tornado watch in effect until 6 a.m. So all these areas over here, West Central Florida, Northwest Florida, down into Southwest Florida, are being advised that there is a tornado threat present in these hurricanes. Typically, they're weaker tornadoes, not like the ones you see out on the Great Plains, or they're in Dixie Alley or something like that. Those F5s or something, F4s, but definitely still a threat. Tornadoes can cause limbs to come down, damage to you. You don't want to be out in the tornado. So look out for tornado warnings in your area. If those do get issued, you want to head to a safer part of your house just to be safe. Stay indoors when those tornado warnings are issued. And we can kind of look at this on radar. We're looking for any kind of turning going on in some of these bands. Not really seeing it right now. You want to see really pronounced reds or greens within the red or green shades. So you want to see the opposite color in that velocity radar that I have up right here. So far, I don't see that really, so we don't have any tornado warnings in effect as of right now. Okay, let's get a look at Idalia. Here it is on satellite. Zoomed in. You're starting to see that little eye form right there. There's the eye. Warmer shade of temperature shade within the colder cloud tops here, so that indicates an eye feature. The warmer shade means that it's going down. You're looking down into the hurricane, and of course it's going to be warmer the further down you go, and colder the further up you go. So very cold cloud tops here, very vigorous and strong thunderstorms developing around the eye here, and as these wrap around even more, you get this eye wall to generate. You're already starting to see here with this eye, that's an indication of strengthening. So this storm is continuing to strengthen. It's over very warm water there in the Gulf of Mexico, and some areas up to even almost 90 degrees Fahrenheit, that ocean water. So lots of fuel for this hurricane to utilize to strengthen. By the way, if you haven't yet, head on over and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can sit down and watch the Bearded Weatherman on your smart TV with the YouTube app. Kind of get better detail on some of the things I'm discussing. Please like this video. Please share it with friends. We want to get this information out to the folks who need it the most. So subscribe if you're on YouTube. Like and share the video. That's always appreciated. We can get this information out and share the Bearded Weatherman and some of my experience out there. Right now, I know that we had some evacuations. I'm just going to pause here and announce some things. I know in Pinellas County they were issuing some evacuations. I do not know if they did the same thing in Tampa as of yet. Somebody could look that up or share that information with us if you have that information in the chat. That's greatly appreciated. If you know of any school closures, things like that, please share that information in the chat so we can get that information out to the people who need it the most. Again, by liking and sharing the video, let's get this information out to those folks who need it. Kayla says Daytona, some wind and rain, pretty quiet. Yeah, I mean, we look over here. Let's see, get back to the reflectivity. We could change the site to Melbourne here. Let's get the latest radar data up in East Central Florida, where I know most of you folks are at right now. Looks like, that band did go through earlier, but pretty quiet right now there. And we'll look and see the forecast, what kind of impacts East Central Florida may have from this storm in a second. But again, pretty quiet out there in East Central Florida as of yet. Terry says, make it rain when it comes to the stars. Yeah, if you guys want to send stars and start a star party, that's always good. Volusia County schools are closed, according to Terry. Is that is that for tomorrow, or is that for today as well? Let's see. Just kind of looking through these comments here. All Central Florida schools closed, says William. Okay, well that is usually the case out of for precautionary reasons, abundance of caution. They'll typically close schools. Sue says Volusia schools closed Wednesday, so of course that's tomorrow. Just trying to get some of the latest here. Seminole County schools closed, Donna says, so that's again, I think all Central Florida schools is what Williams is saying, so that's good information to get out there. Most universities are going to be closed. I assume that means Stetson over there, Daytona State, and Gainesville. I would imagine University of Florida will be closing as well because they may be seeing some greater impacts up there. All right, so thanks for sharing all that news, guys. If you've got more, keep it coming. If you got any information about evacuations, please share that as well in the chat. We want to get this information out to those folks who need it. All right, so that's the latest on radar, and then we're looking closer at Idalia again. Lots of very strong thunderstorms starting to close off an eye and around or an eye wall, I should say. So those thunderstorms will start to wrap around that eye, and that's an indication of strengthening. So still strengthening storm. You do have some rain bands that are starting to move into West Central Florida as we speak. You had some bands move through Central Florida and now moving into the Jacksonville area up here. Very strong thunderstorms, probably some tropical storm force wind gusts embedded within those storms. And then we're going to have a tornado threat from some of these bands as well as we go through the night. As I covered a minute ago, a tornado watch is now in effect for most of Central Florida, and especially West Central Florida and into Northwest Florida tonight. So that's the latest. All right, let's just get a look at the track, and then we're going to zoom in on this track a little bit through Google Earth in a second to give you an idea where these impacts will be greatest. This is of the 8 p.m. advisory here, so that was just issued recently. The storm has picked up some momentum north at 16 miles per hour. We kind of looked at that yesterday, talking about, well, if it's moving at 8 miles per hour, how can it hit land, hit the Panhandle or the Big Bend in that time frame? Well, that's because the storm is picking up speed as it gets engulfed in the long wave trough, and this troughing over the eastern U.S. It will start to get picked up. We'll look at that in the forecast track in a second, as we will definitely cover all of these elements of the storm. I want to start out with the forecast. We're going to talk about possible impacts. We can get that information out, right, because that's the most important information. And then we will then zoom in on this storm even more so as we go through the broadcast. Again, expected to become a major hurricane of Category 3 or above, 110 miles or 111 miles per hour plus. I did see in the discussion that they still are forecasting this storm to reach around 120 miles per hour, maybe even higher. Well, once we get to the 130 mile per hour strength or intensity, then that's a Category 4. So right now it's forecasted to be a top end Category 3 at landfall, but that certainly could change. And again, we are going to go more in depth on that when we look at the intensity models and the intensity forecasts. So again, just getting this information out by 2 p.m. Wednesday, expected to be onshore, definitely starting the weekend by that point, moving into southeastern Georgia and then weakening into a tropical storm by Thursday. We are looking at wind impacts for Charleston and those areas. I was in on the call this morning at my airline. I do the weather, obviously, right? do the weather briefings for them, talking about this storm and the impacts. Obviously, Tampa International was closed today. I haven't heard of any other airport closures, but again, if you have that information to share, go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll get that out to people. Let's see, James checking in, saying hi. Brittany says, well, East Central Florida seeing those bands tonight. We are going to look at that in just a minute here, get some of the impacts with the models, with the forecast. Williams says, heard that the storm is projected to go out to the Atlantic, strengthen, and then head back towards Florida. We're going to take a look at that longer range that was something I did see online, and we'll discuss that possibility here in a little while, guys. So hang in there. Folks can join the Bearded Weatherman, Bearded Weatherman's Bearded Dragons group. That's our private group on the Facebook page. That's what Jillian is sharing right there. We have a Facebook Messenger chat called Dragon Breath. That's what I named it. I know. It just seemed funny. Anyway, you can get in that chat, is what you're saying, and ask questions and share information as well. Terry says Disney and Universal are open tomorrow. Well, hey man, they got meteorologists working for them. Maybe they're seeing something, right? Disney's gonna keep those turnstiles going if they can, right? All right, let's keep going. So again, here's our forecast from the National Weather Service, or pardon me, National Hurricane Center, part of the National Weather Service. You see the large area that is shaded in red. Those are hurricane warnings that are in effect for most of the west coast of Florida right now. So hurricane force winds are very likely to occur within the next 36 hours in these areas. That's the definition of a hurricane warning. So very likely. And then you see tropical storm warnings all down the coast here. As you do, you're going to get a lot more wind along the coast associated with this hurricane, especially. So you see tropical storm warnings now in effect for a lot of the southeastern coast here and the east coast of Florida. Also for southwest Florida, which we'll look at what they're seeing here in a minute when we look at some current conditions. But tropical storm warning, meaning tropical storm force winds of sustained winds of 39 miles per hour or greater, are very likely in these areas in the next 36 hours. So there you go. And then you see once it does exit the U.S., coming out here and then kind of recurving down here a little bit. And so we'll look at that longer range forecast in a minute. As William did mention, some people have mentioned the possibility for this storm to turn and even potentially make landfall again in the U.S. And we're going to really look at that in detail very soon. So that's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Let's look at this track in a little bit more detail here on Google Earth. So here is Idalia way out here offshore. Okay, here's west central Florida, right? Then it's expected now Category 2, as you see. Here's your track cone. You can see that pretty clearly, right? The cone of uncertainty in the forecast. All right, we got some more stars headed my way. It looks like people are starting a little star party here. That's James. James, thank you very much, sir. Bravo Zulu to you for that. Jillian says, coming soon, TBW's ISO bar, a.k.a. mineral watering hole. That's a pretty good idea. We're looking for branding here. Let's see if we can get this licensed, guys. All right, so you see, again, this cone of uncertainty around the track all the way into eventual landfall somewhere in the Big Bend area is what we're thinking. You can see here strengthening the Category 3 strength by tomorrow is the forecast right now, so that shows up on the track. We really got the stars going. Thank you, Jillian. Jillian, Bravo Zulu to you for your support all these years. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the support, guys. Really do. That's very, very nice. All right, so again, let's zoom in. Here's the center of that track. This is as of 6Z on 8:30. I think you can see that. That's tomorrow at about 2 o'clock in the morning, so overnight. So just offshore here, approaching land by early morning tomorrow or overnight tonight. And then we see here's Steenhatchee. We've been talking about some of these areas, Swanee, Cedar Key, Crystal River down here is being impacted by this storm. So these are the areas that are potentially going to see some of those very strong hurricane force, maybe major hurricane force winds, all in these areas. Basically, you could look at this as the wind field right here for some of the stronger winds, and especially around the center. So wherever that eye does come on shore, these are going to be the areas with the strongest winds, especially on this right side of the eye wall here. This is the traditionally strongest part of the hurricane. So some of these areas definitely could see Category 3, or we'll see how much of intensification it will do overnight and into tomorrow. It's still got time to strengthen. Still got a lot of very warm water to use to do that. Not much else in the environment is preventing that at this point. We'll look at that in a minute when we take a look at the intensity forecast. But here are some of the areas: the Big Bend area of northwest Florida. So sometime there on Wednesday morning, landfall probably will occur somewhere in this area here. As we get in closer to the event, the models really get better and more accurate in what they in the forecast itself. So we're starting to really hone in on some of these areas here as being there's Cross City over there. Some of these areas kind of familiar with. There's Gainesville, of course. So potentially seeing some of those some of those tropical storm force winds there in the city of Gainesville. So I assume they'll be closing the University of Florida if they haven't already. And so this is Wednesday morning, landfall. All throughout the day tomorrow, those seas are going to pick up as this storm is throwing in its southerly winds around the center of the storm, pushing water into these areas. We're going to look at the storm surge forecast in 1 minute. So again, these are the areas that are going to be most impacted by that storm surge as we go into tonight and to tomorrow. Then it comes close to Lakeland here, so we now are down to a Category 1 strength. So again, as these hurricanes make landfall, they rapidly start to weaken as they encounter friction from land, and they don't have that warm water underneath them to use as their fuel source, so they start to weaken very rapidly. And here you can see that time frame being around 2 o'clock in the afternoon on tomorrow, 8:30, right? So 2 o'clock tomorrow, expected to be somewhere in this area here in northwest Florida. There's Willacoochee, you got Fruitland up here, some of these areas. Valdosta, Florida, not the Georgia town. But, pretty lightly populated areas, so that's kind of the good news for as far as impacts. But certainly they could be seeing hurricane force winds still here on into tomorrow afternoon in these areas. We'll continue on as far as looking at impacts. And you notice Jacksonville over here. So Jacksonville, while maybe going to see tropical storm force winds, not quite as affected by this track. So we'll hope this track holds up. Now moving into Georgia, right? Or was that Valdosta? That is Valdosta, Georgia. I'm sorry, guys. Someone's going to correct me in the comments. Here's the border right here. You see it, Georgia. In any case, been up there a few times. All right, and so we're moving on here. This is, again, by tomorrow afternoon. And then we'll continue on with this track on into southeastern Georgia here. Here's Tybee Island, or I think it's Tybee. Savannah here. So the track goes right over Savannah. So probable they'll see some tropical storm force winds tomorrow night or tomorrow late afternoon, evening. Then we're looking here. This is going to into Thursday early morning. This is 2 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. We see right outside of Charleston, and it's going to be really pulling in some of those onshore winds here into Charleston. So they will see some storm surge in these areas, and probably some tropical storm force winds. We'll look at that when we look at the model guidance in a little more detail here in a minute. But then now this is by early Thursday morning. It's forecasted to be now moving offshore. Okay, here's Wilmington. Probably some surfers up there in the Outer Banks are going to see some of those swells coming in. It might be a little blown out, but definitely the surf is going to pick up there. It already has been. I've been from Franklin way out at sea. Franklin is now a strong Category 4 hurricane and is throwing swell at the East Coast like crazy. So I know I checked in with some surfers, friends of mine, and they were definitely enjoying that out at New Smyrna today, I believe, or yesterday. I think one of those days. Anyway, now offshore by Thursday afternoon. This is 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the East Coast, 4 hours back from Zulu time, right? And then well offshore now here by Friday early morning, and then closing in on where Franklin will have been right now. Okay, Franklin, that's where Franklin is. Somebody asked me if they were impacted each other, and that's not going to be the case. Franklin will have moved off. You see this is 9/2, September 2nd in the afternoon, and Franklin now is here. And by tomorrow or early tomorrow morning, you can see it's moving away, and definitely will not collide with or interact with. They don't really collide. the physics of it. They can't really collide. They can absorb a little bit into each other, but they normally repel each other as they move around each other. It's called the Fujiwara effect. Happens in the Pacific a lot when hurricanes approach each other. They kind of pinwheel around each other. It's kind of cool. Look it up on YouTube. You can check that out. Fujiwara. Fujiwhara. Fujiwara effect. But in any case, will not impact with that. And then we see by the 3rd of September, what is that? I don't know. This weekend, I think. I have no idea when that is. 9/3. Let's take a look. That is Sunday, this Sunday, the 3rd of September. And that's where the forecast ends. And so we'll look at where that would go after that. But you can definitely see some recurving. A lot of these storms will get picked up and moved off with the long wave trough. That doesn't appear to be the case with this storm. It looks like a ridge will build in and kind of block it from going further north. And then eventually we'll see what the rest of that looks like. But that's the forecast, kind of zeroed in again. Landfall expected somewhere in the Big Bend area. It's all the Big Bend. Not much out here. I know we got Steinhatchee. My uncle's got a place there. Nice place to go and hang out for the weekend. So some of these areas really expected to be impacted by high storm surge, very strong hurricane or even major hurricane force winds. So these areas will definitely see some devastation from this storm from Idalia. Let's check the comments, and then we're going to move on into impacts, or the current conditions, and then we'll go into impacts. James, is it at all possible Franklin's tail could pull or influence Idalia's trajectory? No, it won't really affect it. Whitney says, thoughts on an eastward turn before landfall. We're going to check the forecast in a minute just to hang in there. We'll get there. Donna says she's been following since the beginning. I was actually started in 2020, so it was right after the... well, maybe it posted a video in 2019, that's what you saw. But mainly, in earnest, I started this page back in 2020 and living in Daytona Beach as well, where Donna's saying she is. And she said, I found it by accident, like a lot of people probably. Yeah, I've been doing it since 2020 when the pandemic had us all in lockdown. I just said, hey, you know, there are other people doing this. I did it in the Navy, you know. I have some experience I could share with folks, and of course it's my passion. So I started the page back then. So we're going strong, 3 years now. And a few of these events, as the years have gone on, the technology's gotten a little better. So the show's gotten maybe a little better too. I've gained in experience. I'm continually learning. There's always more to learn in meteorology. There's always more experience to gain from these events. So I've really been educated quite a bit, not only by just looking around the internet and different other weather pages and YouTube videos and textbook learning, things like that, but by you folks. You know, you guys teach me a lot. A lot of people come in here with some, obviously, that passion for weather, and they know quite a bit about some of these things. And so I've learned a lot from you guys too. So we definitely appreciate that and keeping me honest over the years. Terry says, who is the oldest Dragon member? I'm not sure we want to start that conversation, Terry. All right, so let's go and look at current impacts. This is a tide gauge right at the mouth of Tampa Bay, Port Manatee. And you can see a little bit of an increase there at high tide, but not much, almost 2 feet, just a little bit higher than normal. And now the falling tide here with low tide. So we haven't seen much of that storm surge as of yet. Let's check one more buoy in there, and we'll check some buoys around the state of Florida. Sorry, I don't know why I did that. So let's go check Fort Myers here. And okay, they got a little bit of a surge going. You can see about 2 feet there. So minor flood stage. So not too bad as far as storm surge impacts for Fort Myers. This is all current conditions we're looking at. Then we'll talk about impacts here in just a minute. Hold on 1 second. I do want to see something here. Okay. Texting my producer, my wife Jill. Okay, so that's current, and then I'm looking at some other tidal ranges here in Tampa Bay. Again, a little bit higher than the high tide with the normal here. The high tide up to about 2 feet. So that's about all they've seen so far. But as this hurricane continues to churn up the coast, let's see, you can see it out here. There will be more surge flowing into these areas. So not out of the woods yet in Tampa Bay. And we'll look at the forecast for storm surge in just a minute. So there's your current conditions. Not too much surge being detected as of yet. Let's look at some of these other stations further north. Here's Homosassa. They're definitely starting to climb a little bit. These are some areas that are really looking to have impacts. Homosassa Springs, the Homosassa River, where all the manatees are. If you've ever been over there, it's pretty cool. My folks used to live out there. So pretty cool little area, but definitely very vulnerable to storm surge. My dad had a place there a little elevated. The water a few times had gone past the porch up a few feet, so that they are expecting some serious storm surge impacts. So not too much in the way of storm surge impacts as of yet that we're seeing. Let's see if there's anything here in the back of. Yeah, see, not much being detected as of yet. But again, that threat is still present, and the storm surge will be increasing as we go forward in time. Let's get a look at our current conditions out there. Here is Idalia way out here on radar. You see this buoy out here registering 34 mile per hour wind speeds, so very close to tropical storm force winds all the way out away from this storm. So you can see that the wind field for this storm, and especially as it gets stronger, is going to be really far out from the center. So we're going to look at those impacts for your area here soon. But we have a easterly wind at 34 miles per hour. I see gusts to 40, so gusting up past that tropical storm force wind speed of 39 miles per hour. I don't see any wave reporting on that buoy, so that's okay. Let's go in and get some observations closer to east or west central Florida right now. You see some winds picking up a little bit over here down towards southwest Florida. There's Venice. You got southeasterly wind of 17 miles per hour, gusting to 26, so a little bit gusty there. Right there in the mouth of Tampa Bay, we're seeing a southeast wind, 28 miles per hour, gusting to 36 right now. So that's basically, about the strongest we're seeing in the region right now, in the west central Florida and Tampa, those areas. And these winds are starting to pick up a little bit for some of these stations up here. This is Cedar Key, 14 miles per hour now out of the southeast, gust to 16, but nothing like it's going to be here in the next day. Tomorrow morning, those winds are really going to pick up as we go forward in time. So that's the current conditions for Idalia. All right, now let's look at some of the impacts, and then we're going to go ahead and look at the impacts for your area and talk about the track and where it might go, and where then we'll talk about the strength, how strong it will get. So we're going to cover all these things in detail. That's what I do on this on my show here. I do in-depth forecast discussions, because this is sort of the behind the scenes of what I would do every day now at the airline, and what I would do in the Navy. So I got a notification for some stars. Let's see what I got. Greg, thanks a lot, Greg. Sent 99 stars my way. Bravo Zulu to you for your support. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. I'm sorry. My wife's bringing me some water. My producer. Got my doggy back here you can't see. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we'll keep going. That's just some production-related matters there. Get me some water. Here's got this recently, the Seattle Aquarium. I don't know if you can see that. See that maybe? And that's the Space Needle. We went there recently. Anyway, got some stickers from some of the travels we've done. Okay, I apologize for the little break there. Okay, continuing on. So let's look at some impact. So again, the biggest impact, the thing from a hurricane that definitely produces the most devastation and loss of life is storm surge. So we're looking here at the current storm surge forecast, and as you can see, this is from 5 p.m. Eastern, so very recently. Now 10 to 15. We talked about this last night. I believe the values were 7 to 11 feet last night as far as the top end of storm surge. Well, look at this. These values have now climbed, like we talked about, that would be expected if the storm was forecasted to getting stronger, or if it did in fact intensify. Now 10 to 15 feet of storm surge is forecasted just north of Yankeetown here to the Alcilla River, or Alchilla. I can't remember exactly how to pronounce that. Maybe someone could correct me in the comments if they know that area very well. But in any case, 10 to 15 feet. Think about that. 10 feet is the size of an average family home, or the height of an average family home, at least up to the roof, where I think the ceiling, sorry. And then 15 feet, that's above the roof, right? So we're talking about storm surge that can completely engulf a house. If you're around, if anyone's along the coast there, those houses will also be impacted by, or well, I should say, these are going to be along the coast of this storm surge. But in any case, also destructive wave action. Strong wave action that will be jostling and churning those areas along the coast. And so you'll have the storm surge, the water on top of you, and the waves. So definitely, I'm sure there's evacuation orders being issued for these areas. I don't have that in front of me. But if you are in these areas, or you know someone in these areas, please evacuate or encourage those people that you know to evacuate. This is a life-threatening situation, a life-ending situation for sure. Again, this is the part of the storm. The storm surge is that effect of the storm that takes the most loss of lives the most lives by far. We saw it with Ian. So please heed these evacuation orders. And again, further south even, you've got up to 6 feet in Tampa Bay. So some of those areas, some of those houses along the bay there are probably going to have some water in their yard, if not maybe into their houses. And then 6 to 9 feet up here north of Tampa, up to Yankeetown. There's Homosassa here, so probably 7 to 11 feet there at Homosassa. That's again, that's up above your ceiling. That's life-threatening storm surge, and you can see basically the zone for that really powerful storm surge and really high storm surge encompassing a very large area of the Big Bend and of west central Florida up into the Panhandle. So this is a large area here where if you're along the coast in these areas, definitely want to heed your evacuation orders and pay very close attention to the forecasts, as this is life-threatening. Carol says less than 15 feet wiped out Fort Myers Beach. There you go. So again, if you're in a flood-prone area, if you're in an area that has an evacuation zone. So please heed those evacuation orders. They issue them for a good reason. Please take that seriously. This is by far the most dangerous element of a hurricane, is this storm surge. Let's get in a little bit finer detail with storm surge, and so that's not it. And with some of these, with the storm surge inundation model, this is a pretty good model that gives you an indication of how much surge you might get in a specific area. Let's just start kind of over here in West Central Florida with Tampa. You see the blues, greater than a foot. So as this storm track is sort of shifted west, some of these storm surge impacts for Tampa Bay have definitely been decreased because that storm has stayed so far offshore. And so thankfully that's the case. But you can see greater than 3 feet above ground all along Clearwater Beach in these areas. So they'll definitely see some water up there, maybe even up on the road. I don't know if that's quite enough to get over the road there, over the highway. Going north. Now we're seeing some of the bigger impacts from that. Along the Homosassa River here, greater than 3 feet, in some cases greater than 6 feet above ground in some of these areas of Homosassa, which actually that number has come down too because the track has shifted west a little bit. We'll talk more about the track in a second and what the models are saying. But thankfully some of these values have come down. But as you go further north just a little bit towards Crystal River, you see the reds greater than 9 feet. So just that little bit of area change, and also just the vulnerability of some of these areas along the bays and estuaries and along those rivers. Very vulnerable. Obviously, the closer you come to shore here, the greater those impacts. So greater than 9 feet above ground. So I'd imagine there'll be some evacuation orders in these areas. Again, that's taller than an average adult male, so that is life-threatening storm surge for sure. Greater than 6 feet, all in here in Yankeetown, where the Coast Guard station is, and the nuclear power plant. You've got here's the channel here. You've got 9 feet above ground forecasted here, all in these areas, and then inland even. You start to see inland, greater than 3 feet. So it's just as you go inland, that water's being pushed up in there a few miles or a couple miles. I don't have 4 miles here, so I think that's 4 miles, something like that, right? So a couple miles inland, we're going to see flooding, storm surge in these areas. So that's pretty intense right there. Again, you see how that impacts these areas coming inland. A lot of marshes and tidal flats in here, estuaries. Again, greater than 9 feet, all up these areas here. There's Gainesville over there. So greater than 9 feet, and again, you saw on the top end, especially around near where this hurricane will make landfall, 10 to 15 feet. So up to 15 feet of storm surge. Again, that is definitely life-threatening storm surge. So that just gives you an idea, zoomed in, of some of these areas up here in the Big Bend area that will be impacted by that surge. Let's look at the wind field here. So here's the areas that could potentially be seeing tropical storm force winds of 39 miles per hour plus. Tropical storm force winds, sustained winds like that can definitely bring down limbs, can knock out power lines. When those trees fall on power lines, all the rain that's going to be in some of these areas will weaken the ground, get it really soggy, so trees will be more vulnerable to being blown over by wind. So you look for power outages in these areas for sure. My dad works for the power company for their disaster relief, so I assume he's already being deployed. I haven't checked in with him, but he's probably busy getting ready to go into these areas to restore power for folks. So I got a family of people who definitely are involved in the weather and things like that. So anyway, this is the areas that really need to be on the lookout for those stronger winds. You see that there's some probability of those winds coming down into east central Florida even, and parts of central Florida. So we'll talk about that in a second as far as what kind of winds you might be seeing in your area. But these are the areas that will be very impacted by winds. And again, winds are another dangerous part of a hurricane, obviously for the reasons I just mentioned. And also, if you're out in the wind like this, it's dangerous. So there's debris flying around, things like that. So that's that. And then the hurricane force winds, the highest winds, here's the area, and you can see it's a lot more restricted, that zone around the core of the storm itself. But those areas in there in the Big Bend definitely are on the lookout for very strong Category 1 to potentially even over Category 3 major hurricane, or if this hurricane does strengthen to Category 4, we'll talk about that possibility in a second, then they could be seeing Category 4 winds even up to 130 miles per hour in some areas. So very dangerous, fast winds, strong winds associated with this storm. And then finally we'll look at flash flooding is another danger from hurricanes. People like to go out and drive and take a look at the damage, kind of sightsee, things like that. That's very dangerous. In fact, that kills a lot of people. Right after a hurricane, people going out to check the damage, they get flooded in faster moving waters. They drown. They drive through electrified power lines that are down in the water, and they're electrocuted. They're killed by falling tree limbs, and it's just best if you're in these areas to wait it out. Wait till emergency personnel have come through. Wait till the disaster relief have come through and cleared some of these areas out before you go out there and start looking around. Please, definitely dangerous. But in any case, you see this belt here of where the flash flooding risk is moderate right now. So that's anytime you see moderate, that's a pretty good chance of something happening in meteorology. We don't like to go above 40%. for a lot of things because there's so much uncertainty in weather and people make fun of us for it, but it's comes through hard experiences. Is that there's definitely a lot of uncertainty sometimes with these forecasts. In any case, you see the areas that are really expected to be impacted by flash flooding. Not so much down in here into east central Florida and central Florida. You got a little bit of a possibility for some flooding with some of these bands that are going to be moving through in the Tampa area and things like that. But definitely where this storm makes landfall will tell us a lot about what or where will be those areas where it's closer to the center of the storm is going to be your highest threat level. This is day 2 through the next day. I don't need to pull that up, but you see here through Thursday morning that as that storm moves into the southeast and southeastern coast, those chances for flash flooding are definitely going to be there with some of that rainfall. And let's look at that rainfall. So again, not much impact expected over here in the east central Florida from rain from this storm. Definitely the closer you get to the core right here is where the most rainfall is going to occur. So they're looking at potentially 6 to 10 inches of rain. So almost a foot of rain in a very short amount of time, about a 24-hour period. Definitely there's a risk here for flash flooding and flooding in some of these areas, but not so much over here. East central Florida, Orlando, 2 to 4 inches, Yeah, it'll be some street flooding in some areas, but, that's not much more than what you see in an afternoon thunderstorm. Especially as you move toward the coast, I should say, over here. Maybe a little bit of street flooding over here. 2 to 4 inches is a good amount of rain. And then the yellows of 4 to 6 inches is definitely potential for some flash flooding over there closer to Tampa Bay. So that's why they're under that slight risk area. All right, so there's our impacts. Now let's talk about what everybody's been waiting to talk about. All right, we all have been wanting to see what is going to happen where I live. What is going to happen with this track? How strong would this storm going to get? And we're going to talk about that. Levi says I'm complimenting the video on YouTube. Says it looks good. Thank you for that, Levi. Yeah, head on over and subscribe if you'd like. Or if you're not, if you're already on there, go ahead and like and subscribe the video, share with friends. Yeah, you can usually get an app on your TV where you can watch it, from your couch and just kind of hang back. And it's also a little easier to see, obviously. Yeah, James saying he's seen people get stranded in their cars trying to get through some of that flooding. So that's, obviously we don't want that to happen. All right, now again, let's go to what we've all been waiting for. Let's talk about some of the forecasts and impacts, okay? So let's look at the latest models first. And you see here definitely that trend of more of a west moving storm has definitely been borne out in the models. The models really honing in on this area here in the Big Bend, just a little bit further north of where that official track forecast is right now. And this is, of course, in the next couple of days. And then you do see that some models do recurve it back, heading back toward the U.S. But the bulk of the models showing this system moving out to sea. So we'll address that in a little bit more detail with the models, but that question did come up. There is this outlier model, we call it, the American model, saying potentially recurve and potentially becoming a threat again to the U.S. But by far, most of the models do predict this storm to head out to sea in the next 5 days. So that's that right now. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail here in a minute. But that's the latest spaghetti models. We can look at the latest Euro. We kind of get an idea of where they're at. Sorry, that's the wrong thing. Bear with me. We'll get that up. Here's the latest Euro, pretty close to where the American models are zeroing in. So definitely a lot of agreement in the models now on this kind of westbound track away from East Central Florida. And so that's good news for Central Florida that the storm has stayed a little west. That means fewer impacts. We'll look at that in a little more detail here in just a second, but definitely that more westward track of the storm has meant that the impacts would be felt less over in Central Florida, which is where a lot of people are, I know, that watch this page. So, in any case, models coming into good agreement about this track. If you go over here to the actual track, you'll see pretty close to, let's get the line up, as to pretty close to what those models are saying. Let's go back and just kind of compare and contrast here. So there you go. I mean, pretty much dead on to what the Euro's saying. Pretty much dead on to what the American's saying. So a lot of agreement within the model guidance. A lot of more confidence now in this track because we are so close to the event. We are becoming much more confident in that forecast now. You will see wobbles within that line here, this center of this cone. You will see wobbles, so it's very unlikely it will impact directly here at Fish Creek or near there. You probably see some wobble here or in this direction. So definitely want to be on guard for that there will be some shift in the track, a wobble. But we are. I know that the question out there has definitely been, what's the chance? What's the chance of this dramatically shifting and heading in, right into Central Florida? The chances are very low. Okay, and that has to do with the environmental conditions right now. So let's take a look at, what's actually steering this boat here, steering this ship of a hurricane. Let's see what we got on the. Definitely starting to see this right here. This is current live satellite imagery. See that bloom of convection? I'm sorry, but this bloom of convection right here around the eye, starting to develop that concentric eye wall where you have these strong thunderstorms wrapping in. So this storm continuing to strengthen. Someone did ask me what the current aircraft reconnaissance looked like. We could take a look at that. You see some purples in here, so that's your hurricane force winds, so 965 millibars. Again, continuing to drop that central pressure. So down into those 950s, you start to see that Category 3 strength. So it's continuing to strengthen. Again, you see here 64. I don't know if you see that. Maybe you don't see that. But I'm kind of see it. But the purple shade here, you can't really see it because of the banners I have up. But these are your Category 1 hurricane strength. And then lavender. You see some lavenders in here of up to 96 knots. And now that's Category 2 and stronger. So that's our current aircraft recon. Let's get the data up to see what kind of it was seeing. Okay, 75, so a little bit greater than 80 knots. That's about 105 miles per hour, somewhere in there. So, in fact, let me just check that real quick. Yeah, 85 knots, 100 miles per hour. That's basically what we're seeing right now. A little bit stronger is what the National Hurricane Center is seeing. So that's based on the latest aircraft reconnaissance. So that's definitely live information. That's very recent information. So we do still have a Category 2. We have not gotten to the Category 3 level just yet. See if we get any comments. Elizabeth watching on YouTube, watching with the kids, enjoying it. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Awesome to see that. The wind field is that big, will expand once it hits land. Yeah, it expands somewhat, Levi. We'll take a look at that. But most of the winds are going to be around this area here. This is the greatest probability for the strongest winds on this chart here, is in these areas here. Right now, that's the greatest probability. Somewhat less of a probability, but still some greater than 50% for parts of these areas in here, which some of them are kind of close to East Central, I know. But we'll look at the models, and I'll give you a better understanding of the local impacts in just a second. But I want to show you kind of what is Where did I get? Did I lose my tropical tidbits? I lost my tropical tidbits. All right, I want to show you some of the steering patterns that are responsible for what this track is, and talk about the chances for some type of dramatic shift in this forecast, because I know that's a concern. You know, you're like, well, what if it moves? What if it shifts? What if it changes direction and heads right inland? And then, you know, a lot of you folks, like I said, are there in Central Florida, so you're concerned about that. I get it. So let's look at that. Actually, no. Let's go to the yeah. Here we go. Okay. So right now you see what's guiding this storm is a little bit of troughing in place out ahead of it. Got this deep trough coming in, this long wave trough kind of pulling it in, right? You see the steering flow kind of like this. But you see this here? You see this big thing right here? You see that? That's a ridge, okay? And it even extends up a little bit further. See, sort of like up here? That's a ridge. A ridge is higher pressure, and it blocks. It's a traffic cop that says, you don't go here in the upper levels, in our upper atmosphere. So this is at 250 millibars. That's about 40,000 feet up there, way up there, where the winds are guiding this storm around. You know, again, this storm is large in vertical extent. It's tall, right? Some of those thunderstorms inside of that hurricane are up to about 40,000 feet in some instances. So the winds up there are going to guide this system the most, okay? And when you have a ridge in place, and you see the wind flows mainly, got this ridge, right? We're here over the Bahamas. That's where it's, that's the ridge is actually centered there, the upper level high that is associated with this. This is how you draw this on a map. Upper level map is a ridge. You see here the trough moving in that is sort of guiding this system up and eventually around that ridge and out to sea. And you notice with the steering flow, look at this. It's kind of right dead center where that track forecast is, isn't it? Maybe a little bit further up, I'm sorry. So you can kind of see the ridge. Sorry. All right. You sort of see the winds flowing in here, and there's the ridge, and then back out to sea, right? As long as this ridge is in place, this system will not go east. It won't make a hard right turn because it's physically impossible. High pressure moves into low pressure, not the opposite. Low pressure cannot move into high pressure because of physics. All right, there's just more stuff there. It's blocking it. It's keeping it out. So the probability of a hard right turn, pretty much non-existent right now. Okay, saying there's a chance, you know. Sure, an asteroid could come by and influence this pattern, but that, again, is very improbable. And I think we'd be more worried about the asteroid than the hurricane at that point, right? So, again, the hard right turn will not happen with this storm. Right now, the models are in good agreement for landfall somewhere in the Big Bend area. The models get much more accurate as we get more and more data from the center of that storm and the environment around it. Now, we've had Hurricane Hunter aircraft flying in and out of that storm for the last couple of days, getting up-to-date measurements. We've had weather balloons being sent up more than twice a day, you know, to measure the atmosphere around this storm, right? From some of those surface the surface stations or the land stations, right? They're sending up balloons to take measurements called radiosonde measurements, and it's detecting all the different conditions in the atmosphere that may steer this hurricane and that may influence how strong it gets. So that's all going on right now, especially as it approaches land, getting even more accurate information. So we're in that critical time now where that track, we really are honing in on that track and where exactly this storm will go. So again, that's what's this trough coming down is going to start to pick this storm up and move it out, and then eventually way out to sea, at least according to most of the models right now. So this long wave trough moving into the eastern U.S. probably is going to pick up this storm once it heads out to sea and move it safely out to sea. That's the most likely scenario, and we'll look at that in a little more detail in the models. But there you go. Basically, I think I give a lot of people the answers they wanted to hear. I see the view count has dropped dramatically. That's okay. I know the diehards are here now. Jillian and Terry and all you guys. Appreciate you guys' support over the years and for hanging in there on these videos. Much appreciated. All right, now let's talk about the next item. How strong will this hurricane get before landfall? Now, right now, it is forecasted to be Category 3, top end Category 3 at 115 miles an hour. Well, not quite top end, just barely actually a Category 3 right now. So that's the forecast. So Category 3 major hurricane. Anytime you see a major hurricane, especially towards where the hurricane eventually makes landfall, you're going to see a lot of impacts from that. So let's get a sense of what intensity we might see. We're going to go to the HAPS B model. This is a hurricane model. All this does is just really look at the center of the storm and give you a forecast for how powerful it might get, how intense. Here we are down to 952 here overnight tonight. So in the next few hours, it's expecting even a pretty sizable drop in central pressure. So potentially that rapid intensification starting to occur for this storm. 952, 953. See a really developed eye wall just before landfall here. 953. So that's a Category 3 right there. Top end. Category 3. So that's the current forecast. You can see that nice eye wall, but not nearly as nice as another storm. We'll compare it with this other storm, this Category 4. You see how developed that eye wall is here? Right there. Nice concentric eye wall. Actually, this storm's showing weakening here. I guess it's starting to really get affected. So this is not quite the best example, but if you've been watching the satellites, you know what type of eye wall I'm referring to. Let's see if we can even get that image up. Get out there to see. Yeah, you can see that Franklin's starting to weaken, but see that pronounced eye wall in the last. Let's go back a little ways. Okay, look at that. See that eye wall? You see Idalia is still down here without that. This is from like earlier today. But you notice that nice eye wall around there. Not quite. That's a Category 4 hurricane that we were seeing. Now it's starting to weaken for sure, you can tell. But that's the kind of eye wall that we're not going to see potentially according to this model. So what does that mean? Well, if the model's correct and handling it properly, we won't see a Category 4. Although right before landfall, you notice you do start to see it. So that's what I was talking about yesterday. All right. I was saying I didn't think this would be anything like a Cat 5 or anything because I didn't think it had enough time. If this guy had had just a little more time over that water, we may have been dealing with some top-end Category 4 or 5 hurricane. It definitely is possible because you can start to see it there. 948 central pressure, 948 millibars central pressure is, let's go to Dr. Google here, or Google University. Probably still a Cat 3, but you're really approaching that Cat 4 level. Yeah. Yeah, so right around 944 is typically where you see a Category 4. So very close by landfall is what the, and you can really start to see that eye starting to form. So again, if this, see that closed off eye, cloud-free eye, if this storm had just a little more time, it would have potentially be even more catastrophic than it will be at landfall. Again, right around these areas in here, you're going to see the most devastation. You're going to see the biggest, the highest storm surge values, all in these areas where you get this strong hurricane force wind pushing all that water in front of it, and you get the storm surge in these areas, right? And then you get the strong winds, so you get lots of trees down, houses, roofs getting blown off and things like that with a strong Category 3 hurricane. So, or close to being blown off, or just a lot of damage in these areas we'll be seeing, I'm sure. But again, just didn't have enough time. That's good news. That's a good news for these areas that if that it didn't quite have the time it needed to strengthen that much. Okay. Maybe Jillian says maybe the aliens could come scoop it out of the Gulf and drop it right over Deland for Teeter. Jillian, here's something. Oh man. Well, of course, everyone else in Deland doesn't want that. But Terry's ready to go, you know. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a cool thing, right? It's an interesting thing to see a hurricane like this. It's a rare thing to see a hurricane like this make landfall, actually. If you think of all the hurricanes that are out there sometimes, that do ultimately form, and then you think of all the tropical storms that never make it to hurricane, this is a rare event, especially that it's making landfall. You know, again, you think of all the hurricanes that stay safely out to sea, all those storms that end up staying safely out to sea, and then sometimes you get one of these guys, you know. Hopefully this is all we're going to have to deal with this year. We can look at the long-range outlook in just a second. But if I was to make a guess, I'm saying that HAF's B model's right on it. Look at some others. So the, 939 according to the HWRF, so that it would be a Category 4, and you can see that it definitely undergoes rapid intensification as it approaches shore, according to the HWRF model, another hurricane model. So this would be a Category 4, and you can see, again, that very pronounced eye closed off. So this would cause even more devastation in these areas if this is, in fact, the actual, the actual strength of the storm, the intensity of the storm when it comes to making landfall. So that's on the higher end, I think, if you're going to look at all these models. Let's look at another one here, the HMON. HMON. More in line with the HAF's B model. All these acronyms, right? These are all hurricane models from the National Weather Service, National Hurricane Center. You can see a nice eye here just before landfall. So again, strong Category 3. You see how the wind field's not quite as concentric or around the eye. That eye wall is not quite as closed off as you would see in a Category 4 or 5 with this storm. So that's what it's showing. So agreement with two of those big hurricane models on probably a top end Cat 3. But, you know, we do see the HWRF indicating maybe a little bit stronger, maybe up to that Category 4 point at landfall, low end Category 4 hurricane. So, not that there is such a thing as a low end wind when we talk about winds. A Category 4 is a bad boy. It's a strong hurricane, and you can see again, it wraps that it has a very pronounced eye wall. See this eye wall, and then that core, that concentric core of hurricane force, major hurricane force winds now around the eye itself. It's wrapped around very tightly, very organized storm. If this is what eventually happens, we will see if overnight this storm really intensifies quite a bit, does that rapid intensification, then that's definitely possible. Alrighty, got some stars. I heard the notification. Kimberly, thank you, Kimberly, for the stars my way. 50 stars, much appreciated to you, Kimberly. Bravo Zulu to you. All right, now let's look at this. So what do we got? Let's look at impacts for East Central Florida, because I know you guys want to see that. You don't want to see the impacts, but you want to see what they might be, of course. Let's look at wind. And you go in towards the event, right? See some gustier winds over here. Here's 20 knots of wind. So got some nice gusty winds over here for East Central Florida. We'll zoom in on that. Right here. This is the latest and greatest from the Euro. Let's see what, I don't think I've gotten a chance to see the latest. Yes, it kind of does a little wobble there at the end. Notice. So what would those winds be with that wobble? Up there in the 20 knot region, sustained. So definitely, gusty winds. You'll see the trees bend a little bit, or you'll see the wind up there, but definitely nothing like in closer here with hurricane force winds, strong winds, or even tropical storm force winds of at least 33 knots. Yeah, 34 knots would be tropical storm. So definitely nothing like that. So as far as wind impact, yeah, it'll be gusty. Yeah, there'll be wind. But at least if these forecasts hold true, if there's a little wobble here to the right a little bit at the end, you would see a little bit stronger winds, but I don't anticipate you seeing those. Well, of course, this is not as strong of a hurricane as it will be. Let's see if we can get a better representation of those winds. Might have been off a little bit, but I just don't think we're going to get serious wind impact from this storm. H4, yeah. No. Hold on 1 second. It's not giving me wind on this one. When I do the hurricane model, it won't let me zoom in. But look, okay. We could be close to that tropical storm force wind impact for Central Florida, okay? Because the Euro here is not quite forecasting it as intense as it probably will end up being. You know what I mean? So, well, let's get 18. It's just the global models are not the greatest at getting the intensity right on these storms. You definitely see better guidance from these hurricane models. So we want to be thinking this is going to be a little stronger than 969 millibars. We're looking down in the 950s for Category 3 potentially. So that wind field will be slightly larger. Okay. So these winds might be a little light, a little too light for this storm. So maybe they'll be closer to 30 knots. But that's still below that tropical storm force wind category, or destructive wind. Yeah, there'll be some limbs probably down, or maybe, but I don't see widespread power outages or something like that. And I'll go back to this graphic from the National Hurricane Center to give you kind of the feel for where those would be. The greatest wind impacts are going to be all in here, and especially in here. Okay, that's just not quite down to the Central Florida level. You know what I mean? So I don't anticipate a serious wind event with this storm. I don't see that occurring. If, it could be a little wobble, and that would mean slightly stronger winds. You know what I mean? Approaching the tropical storm level. See that orange where there's some probability greater than 50% that those could reach down into those areas. But as you can see, the probability for tropical storm winds decreases quite a bit down into the Central Florida. I don't know why it does that. All right, some stars. We have a star party tonight, guys. Star party. Elizabeth, thank you so much. Elizabeth sent 100 stars my way. Bravo Zulu to you, Elizabeth. Guys, very much appreciated. I do have a comment about a September 10th storm in the Gulf. That is more than 10 days away. So that is just too early to say something like that. We don't do that on the Bearded Weatherman here. 10 days is a little far out there to be going. Actually, more than 10 days, I should say. So let's take that with a grain of salt. We'll look at the long-range forecast here in a minute. But we can't say that kind of thing for sure on here yet, because that is too far out in the future. I don't make those forecasts that far out. The models are just not accurate, or not as trustworthy at that type of time frame. Not saying it won't happen. I'm not here to come down on anyone, but we don't spread that kind of information on here without really looking at it in detail. So I'm going to go ahead and that one's going to be gone. All right. That comment will be gone, and we do not forecast out that far. We do not try to scare people with some type of determination like that far in the future when we don't have accurate information that far out in the future. So that's why I'm sort of kind of making that a point on here. And if it becomes a habit, if it becomes a pattern, that person will be removed from the page for sure. All right, what were we doing? Yeah, so the wind, but you look down here and 30% probability, so we're less than half here. So the chances of a strong wind event there in Central Florida very low. The chances for any kind of flooding very low. The impacts, in other words, for from this storm in Central Florida, or especially East Central Florida, of course, toward the coast, West Central Florida, Tampa region, they're going to feel more impacts. But even there, we're not seeing the kind of impacts that some of the forecasts were saying a couple days ago. So, good news for those folks over there as well. Most of the impacts from this storm will be in this belt here, towards the core of this system, the wind and the strong rain. All right, that's intensity. Now let's do a long-range outlook, because people are asking about what the possibilities are in this storm potentially recurving, what the potential or what the long-range forecast for the tropics is. So again, when we talk long-range, anything in meteorology, we are going to take things with a grain of salt, as I just sort of indicated a minute ago in my comments about that post. Take it with a grain of salt the further out we go in the future with modeling, because of entropy, because of the degradation of accuracy of forecasting accuracy in complex systems. It's a very important part of computer modeling the atmosphere. The understanding that there are so many factors at play that not even the most powerful supercomputer out there can get it right, dead on right, and so we have to continue to. Kimberly said the basement for you. Inside joke. A lot of you guys know what that means. I'm not going to go into detail on that. All right, but anyway, so we're taking it with a grain of salt. All that being said, we're taking a grain of salt. There we go. We've got Franklin moving out. Again, not going to collide with Idalia. Idalia goes out to sea. Idalia starts to spin. It's getting a ridge. See that high up here, this ridging. See the high? God dang it with this stupid pen. The ridging all over here is going to stop that storm from moving out to sea, like you see Franklin doing in this troughing here. See the trough? There's the ridge. See the difference? And then what happens after that? Well, the euro doesn't go out that far. Well, actually, no, okay, the 18Z euro doesn't go out that far. Let's see what the 12Z euro said. Spinning, 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 and then picked up and moved out by 10 days. Now, again, that's pretty far out there. By the way, I don't see this hurricane or anything in the Gulf in 10 days. Or the 8th, I guess. We'll look at this one on the GFS. But, so that would be, what we might be looking at out that time frame. Again, not saying it won't happen, but that's pretty far off from the Gulf to travel in 2 days. So I highly doubt that would be the case. But anyway. There it is getting picked up. Now let's see what I think the GFS did have it recurving. Yeah, so you see there it is, Idalia. There it is, spinning around out there. And then potentially making another impact with the U.S. There in the first week, into the first week of September. So still a possibility. Again, most of the models do not say that. We could look at longer range ensemble guidance on this storm, which is better for predicting those sorts of things. Let's get another window up. Let's go to my ensemble guidance, in-car ensembles. These are better at the longer range predictions. If I can find it. There it is. So you see it kind of sitting out here, and then a lot of the models do take it out, and some of the models take it in. So what's that mean? Well, that we're still not sure. That's what it means on whether this could potentially come back and become a threat again to the U.S. Looking at the, what was it, the Euro guidance, which I do swear by quite a bit. Most of that Euro guidance does take it out to sea, so that's sort of the tale of two models right now. I'm not in a position right now to say that I'm 100% confident it'll go out to sea. My feeling is it will be pulled back out to sea at some point, but it will be spinning around out there, and so unfortunately, we're going to have to continue watching this storm out into the future once it makes landfall. It's a very rare, not non-zero chance, but very, very rare for these storms to recurve and make another impact. I can't remember a time that ever happened. I know with, was it Harvey? Not Harvey. The one that went over the Bahamas and sat there, I think that had recurved. But I don't think it was after... No, I don't think that was after landfall. Yeah, no. So I can't tell you one example. Maybe one of you guys has an example, but I can't think of a single example myself of a storm that made landfall, then recurved back around and did it again. Again, it's happened. I know it's happened. I just don't know off the top of my head which storm that was and when that was. But it has happened. It's not impossible. Ivan. Okay, Ivan. When was Ivan? Wasn't last year, was it? The Fort Myers storm? That did that? Where did it do? Was that? Is that? Am I thinking? Oh no, last year was Ian, Fort Myers. Ivan. Okay, when was that, guys? When was Ivan? I think that was a while ago, wasn't it? Maybe wrong. It may not have been that long. I just don't know. That might have been when I was in the Navy out at sea. Wasn't really paying too much attention at that time to the East Coast weather. In any case, Ivan was the storm. 04, okay. Yeah, so quite a while ago. Thank you, Jill. My producer also chiming in with some information for me. 2004, and so did Jillian. So thank you guys. I think both of you would probably... Oh, I know Ivan was a Central Florida storm, if I'm correct. Is that right? I know there were the 2 or 3 that came through right close to each other. That was a pretty crazy year for Central Florida. In fact, that was the year I was out to sea. It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on an aircraft carrier with definitely other things on my mind at that time than the weather here in the U.S. I was more worried about getting aircraft off the flight deck at that time safely. So anyway, yeah. Let's look at the GFS. Again, that does pull it back in, and then let's see what we're talking about. Yeah, so I don't see this phantom storm in the Gulf of Mexico, so I'm really not sure where that information came from, but again, we don't do that here. We don't make guesses like that and scare people before we have all the information in hand. And then we'll go to 12Z. Okay, and then there's the Euro, so it's doing something with a wave off Africa. Let's see if that's showing up. Maybe, yeah, this one here, maybe. No, it's kind of taking that one out to sea. Let's see what the Euro does with that one. Boom, boom, spinning. Yeah, it goes out to sea. So that is something else potentially down the road. That one. Right, it's starting to strengthen there as it moves into north of the windwards. So, but this is 10 days out. Remember, September 8th. So we got to take this with a grain of salt. This may not even happen. That track there. So, but it'll be something we're going to look at. We're going to keep watching. Again, the Euro very accurate on this storm, right? On Idalia. That's how you say Idalia. Charlie, Jean, and Francis says Valerie for those 3 storms. Good job. 20 points for you in hurricane trivia. Jillian says that was her first evacuation. Ivan. Terry says bonus points for getting the correct answer on Ivan there. Jillian too. It was right about the same time, I think. In any case, we'll be watching this storm. Let's just check in one more final time, see if we have any updates on Idalia. Oh, there is an update here. Okay, so now we're right at the 110 mile per hour level, so we're right at the top end of Category 2, according to the Air Force Hurricane Hunter out there. Minimum pressure's dropped to 960, so we're starting to see maybe first indications of that rapid intensification, or we're starting to see that. But it is forecast to become a major hurricane tonight. So strengthening continuing to occur. Let's look at the storm right now on satellite. That's not it. That's that one. If it was that one, you'd be in big trouble. That's Franklin. See that eye? See that beautiful, kind of raggedy a little bit. It was definitely looking a lot better last night, but it is moving into cooler water, so it will start to weaken. There's Idalia. Definitely see that eye now. It's definitely weakening at you. Starting to see that convective banding really start to wrap in around the center, and that eye just start to wink, right? You can definitely see down all the way to the bottom of the ocean, or pardon me, down to the surface of this hurricane through that infrared view. Of course, we can't get visible up. It's too, it's in the nighttime over there. But definitely that eye starting to wink, so still strengthening. You're starting to see very cold cloud tops, those whites, negative 80 Celsius, very cold cloud tops. The very top of that storm, wrap in around the core. So definitely indications of continuing intensification on satellite, and from the measurements taken by the hurricane hunters, definitely expected to become a Category 3 major. You do see some of these bands moving onshore. Those should start to move into Central Florida soon. We'll check the radar here. Some of these bands here starting to move into the area. Let's actually look at the models on that one. Gives you a sense of when those bands might be coming through. That was a question from way earlier. I'm sorry that I didn't get to it until now. This is the HRRR model. We use this quite a bit in the airline business when I do my flight planning and things like that, for your keeping your flight safe and routed around weather, because it does give you this composite reflectivity view similar to what you might see in your phone, something like that. And you see bands coming on shore now into Tampa in the next couple hours. This is 10 o'clock p.m. local, so right around now we're starting to see those bands come on and continuing to move into the area. So you might, over there in Orlando, start to see some bands in some heavy rain too, thunderstorms, maybe potentially an isolated tornado or two. We are now, Central Florida is under a tornado watch right now because of that right front side of the storm impacting those storm bands moving through. Is going to be the place where there will be an elevated tornado threat, the right front side of a hurricane. So again, there's your bands, and so by about this is about 3 in the morning, so approaching sunrise, some of those bands will be moving through. So late night, some of you might sleep right through it. But heavier rain bands coming in, some gustier winds inside some of those bands up to hurricane. Pardon me, didn't say that. Up to tropical storm force, so you may see a gust up there to 39 miles per hour in some of these stronger bands. And then, sweeping through the area a little bit throughout the morning. This is 5 a.m., so just before sunrise. A couple more bands in behind the storm throughout the morning hours. See some bands here moving through late morning. This is 11 a.m. Eastern. So in that time frame, late morning, afternoon time frame, seeing some scattered thunderstorms in these bands. But the tornado threat would have now subsided by this point, and will have moved out over to these areas. That tornado threat will definitely pick up in these areas as this storm moves out. So that tornado threat will have definitely decreased by tomorrow afternoon. So here we are, moving into that time frame, and then get some couple thunderstorms, couple bands of scattered thunderstorms moving throughout Central Florida throughout the day tomorrow. So, but definitely the stronger bands will be moving through overnight, and again, some of you may sleep right through it, or some of the stronger rains and a couple of those thunderstorms with potentially an embedded tornado or two within some of those cells. So again, keep your weather radio close, or keep your phone volume up, and don't disable your alerts. If you do if a tornado warning, pardon me, not a watch. A watch just means you're on the watch for it. A warning means warning, it's on the way. Seek shelter. Again, here's the tornado watch, valid until 6 a.m. Eastern. So that, again, that's when those bands will be moving through. I just showed you on the models. So again, if you get a tornado warning in your area, definitely heed that warning. Stay indoors, safest part of the house. You can see the chance for anything, any kind of strong tornado that might be life-threatening is low. You have 2+. So best thing to do would just be to stay indoors, and you'll be fine probably. But you know, you want to heed a tornado warning anytime you see it. Don't want to be outside when a tornado comes over. Definitely dangerous. There's the counties that are in that. So we don't even see tornado watches out for East Central. So East Central Florida won't have much of the risk, at least right now, according to the National Weather Service. It's always possible they may expand this watch out a little ways towards the east, but not a big. Doesn't seem to be as much of a hazard. Tornadoes there in East Central Florida with this storm, so that's good news. Okay. Yeah. One or two more things here. Let's see if we've gotten any kind of surge picking up for Tampa. Not really. They had a little bit earlier. Let's go out some other areas of the west coast of Florida. It's creeping up there in Homosassa, but not too bad. So again, the majority of the storm surge we're going to see as this system approaches the Big Bend in these areas. That'll start to pick up. Some of these tidal gauges will start to reflect that storm surge, but that's still a few hours off for sure. And some of the current conditions around Central Florida. Again, you see some gustier winds over here toward the coast, 20 knots here. So that's there south of Tampa there, I guess, Sarasota, yeah. Got southeast at 22 miles per hour, gusting to 37. So getting up there close to that tropical storm force wind gust level. Let's see what we got here in Tampa. Right there on the bay. We've got southeasterly 31 gusting to 38 miles per hour, so very close to that 39 mile per hour threshold. Look at this one over here, Clearwater. Really, the wind really picking up there. So we got 47 miles per hour wind speed was reported there. The gust shows 28 miles per hour, so it's a little suspect, but could be some strong tropical storm force winds picking up there along the coast for sure. This hurricane is out here out to sea. And rain coming on shore there in East Central Florida right now. Again, we can show that on the radar. Some of these yellows in here, stronger rain showers and stronger rain bands there. They're over West Central Florida right now, moving on shore. So they're definitely being impacted by some of those rains right now. And there's the eye way out there. You can see it very clear on radar. There's the eye. Strengthening storm. Idalia continuing to strengthen. Okay. Idalia. Yeah, yes. Jillian. Idalia. E-Y-E Dalia. Yes, that's how you say it, right? Idalia. That's a very southern name, isn't it? Terry says I'll sleep right through it. Probably will. Probably will. At least that part. You get some bands tomorrow. A couple gusty winds, but not too bad. And let's see if we see any kind of tornado rotation going on. I don't really see any greens in the red up here or red in the greens, so on the velocity radar I'm not seeing really any kind of rotation. Might be a little bit going on in here. Some of these bands coming. So you might see as this propagates some of these cells down here, unless this is a attenuation in the radar or an error in the radar data, I'm not sure. But as these maybe move through that west central Florida area, you might see an isolated tornado or two with some of these cells down here. You can see potentially a little rotation going on down there, but this also could be some error in the data. So don't see that threat currently, but that tornado watch is in effect until tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Eastern. Okay, I think I've covered it, guys, for tonight. I think we've got the information out there now. School closures all over Central Florida for tomorrow and I guess maybe Thursday. Storm surge definitely going to be the biggest destructive element in this storm, and we're going to see exactly what strength does that storm get to. It's date night tonight for me and my wife, so we're going to go see a movie here in a little while. And then I'll check back in when I get home to see exactly what the strength might be at landfall. But really, I've kind of given you all the information I can for tonight. Again, East Central Florida probably will feel minimal impacts from this storm. That's good news. But the rest of the state and the Big Bend area, especially the Big Bend area, we're going to see a lot of impact, a lot of destruction potentially, especially if this does in fact reach that top end Cat 3 or low end Cat 4 level. It's going to be some serious damage, and storm surge will potentially, hopefully it won't be the case, but it's usually the case, and not to be morbid, that with a major hurricane,